Assalamu alaikum, everyone. Thank you, everybody, for being here. This is our town hall for the community. My name is Jinan. I'm the National Events and Outreach Manager for CAIR. I'm going to have my panel introduce themselves, but first I want to thank Dar al-Hijra for hosting us. They're always very gracious hosts, so thank you guys for everything and for welcoming us. I'd also like to thank AMP, American Muslim for Palestine, and Mass DC for co-sponsoring the event. We actually have someone from AMP that's going to be speaking here as well. Today's topics, we're going to be discussing the Muslim Ban 3.0 updates and how it differs from the previous ban, as well as the Rohingya crisis and what our communities can do and what our organizations are doing to address the situation. So without further ado, I'm going to start with Hassan.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Oh, I thought you were looking at me, I'm sorry. As Janan said, my name is Hassan Ahmed. I am an immigration attorney. I've been practicing here in Northern Virginia for I've been practicing for about 15 years, the last 10 or 11 of which have been here in Northern Virginia. I serve on the board of the Dulles Justice Coalition, which is the group of airport lawyers that grew out of the first travel ban. If any of you were aware of what happened in January of this year. I also serve on Governor McAuliffe's Virginia Asian Advisory Board and also on his commission for inclusion and diversity.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Ahmed Mohammed. I am a trial attorney for CAIR, Council on American Islamic Relations. I'm new to DC. This is my first time here. I wish that I was here under better circumstances. But I grew up in the great state of Louisiana. I stayed there for 21 years. Now I'm looking forward to experiencing the metro life here in DC. Look forward to give you a little bit of information and update about the Muslim ban. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum. My name is Tahir Karzullah. I'm the Associate Director of Outreach and Grassroots Organizing for American Muslims for Palestine. Our office is actually down the street here at Falls Church in Seven Corners. I've been here in DC for about a year now. I used to live in California my whole life. I lived in California, but I moved here to work with Dr. Osama Bashir and American Muslims for Palestine last year. It's been a great pleasure to serve this community and so many around the country in our work for the noble cause of Palestine.
Assalamu alaikum everyone. My name is Robert Khan. I'm the National Government Affairs Director for the Council on American Islamic Relations. I've had this privilege of doing that for 6 years for CAIR. The gentleman to my right, two attorneys, their job is to make sure your civil rights are being protected. My job is to make sure that our community is exerting those rights, the right to assemble, petition the government, and speak freely. So hopefully some of our takeaways from tonight are not only what's happening, but what we can do.
All right, so we're just going to jump right in right now. I'm going to give each panelist about 10 minutes to speak on the topic that they are going to present, and then we will definitely open it up for questions from the audience.
Great. All right, so I'll start first. We're going to talk about the Muslim Ban 3.0. Before I do that, I just want to go back a second that this ban 3.0 that just got installed September 24th. It's nothing new. It's just another reiteration of President Trump's campaign promise that he made back in December of 2015. And that's ultimately to ban Muslims from entering the United States. He has tried this on 2 previous occasions. As soon as he got inaugurated as president, he passed his first Muslim ban. Chaos ensued, and almost immediately, obviously, the court stepped in and blocked that ban. A couple of weeks later, Muslim Ban 2.0 came forward. Similarly, the courts blocked that ban also for the most part. And then eventually went up to the United States Supreme Court, where they allowed President Trump to install his ban on a partial basis, but they carved out an exclusion for anybody that had a bona fide relationship to either an individual or an organization here in the United States. And we're going to talk about that a little bit more going forward. And then obviously the Muslim Ban 2.0 for immigrants and non-immigrant individuals is set to expire on the 24th of September, which is one of the reasons why President Trump ultimately passed Muslim Ban 3.0, which is very similar to Muslim Ban 2.0. The one main takeaway, main difference is that he dropped the country of Sudan from the list that he was blacklisting from entering this country, but he added another Muslim majority nation in Chad. So I'm just going to go through the countries respectively and how the new Muslim ban affects each country. So we're just going to start right ahead with Chad. So the new restrictions on Chad is that the entry of any Chad individual for immigrant visas, as well as temporary visas who are here on business or as tourists, is going to be barred from entering the United States. For those individuals, that ban goes immediately unless you can prove a bona fide relationship of some sort, which on October the 18th, regardless of whether you have a bona fide relationship or not, the ban is going to apply to you. It's like after I go through each country, we'll discuss on what a bona fide relationship exactly means. Iran is a country that its nationals, as immigrants and non-immigrants, are banned completely, except for nationals who are here on N, F, and J visas. And then the latter group are subject to more enhanced screenings that normal individuals would normally not have to go through. Libyan nationals are barred completely as immigrants and non-immigrants. On the non-immigrant side, there's a ban on business or tourists. Those individuals are suspended from coming in the country. Syria bans all nationals, immigrants, non-immigrants. Unlike the other countries, Syria actually doesn't have any exceptions for student visas or anything like that. It's a complete ban on all visas for Syrian nationals. And then Somalia, all of their immigrants are banned from entering the country. And then individuals that want non-immigrant visas, like student visas, visitor visas, those individuals will have to go through enhanced screening processes. And then Yemen, my home country, their immigrant nationals are going to be banned from entering the country, as well as any visitors who want to come here as tourists or business individuals on non-immigrant visas are going to be suspended from entering the country while Muslim Ban 3.0 goes into effect. Now, President Trump this time also added 2 additional non-Muslim countries. I guess in his way to kind of argue that this is not a Muslim ban, which it is. He added 2 non-Muslim countries in North Korea, which last year, according to reports, had 50 visas issued to it. Those individuals from North Korea, whether immigrant or non-immigrant, are suspended from entering the country as well. Also, interestingly enough, North Korea has a law that prevents its citizens from traveling outside the state. So that's not going to have much, if any, of a practical effect. And then, of course, he added Venezuela. But unlike the bans on the Muslim majority nations, when it comes to Venezuela, the president's sanctions are very targeted, and it only targets the government officials who are responsible for vetting processes in those countries. So it targets those government officials and then their close and immediate family members, as opposed to categorically banning nationals from entering the United States. Now, who qualifies as an immigrant? Usually an immigrant is an individual who's seeking admission here into the United States to reside here on a permanent basis. Now we contrast that to a non-immigrant who's seeking admission on a temporary basis. When you think of non-immigrant, really what should come to mind is business visitors, tourists, students, exchange students, scholars who come here on a 1 or 2 time occasion to do a speech at a university, or temporary workers. So for the Muslim majority nations that are covered under Muslim Ban 2.0, Muslim Ban 3.0 goes into effect October 18th. And that effect, it's effective regardless of what the Supreme Court does, according to President Trump's proclamation. For all other individuals that don't have an exception under the United States Supreme Court's bona fide relationship standard, the ban has already started, and it started September 24th, once the at 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, whenever President Trump signed this proclamation. All right, so I mentioned the word bona fide relationship, or that phrase, a couple of times. Let me go through what the United States Supreme Court has said about what does it mean to have a bona fide relationship. This has been litigated through numerous courts, and President Trump at one point, the administration tried to limit that definition to be very, very narrow. But the court has said that individuals who have a close familial relationship, whether that's your mother, grandmother, mother-in-laws, stepmother, niece, nephew, and cousins, those are close family relationships, that if you have that here in the United States, then you have a bona fide relationship. And Muslim Ban 2.0 doesn't apply to you until October 18th. Then it's Muslim Ban 3.0, and bona fide relationship kind of goes out the window. Now, can you hear me? Okay, I apologize. Thank you. All right. So the other part of that is that you can have a formal, documented relationship with a U.S. entity that you establish in the ordinary course of business. The prime example for that is if a university wants to schedule you as a speaker. All right, excellent. So yeah, if you have a formal, documented relationship that comes about in the ordinary course of business, that will count as a bona fide relationship as well. Now, under the new ban, there are some exemptions. So the ban doesn't apply to individuals who are green card holders, lawful permanent residents. Obviously, it doesn't apply to U.S. citizens. It doesn't apply to anybody that's admitted or paroled into the United States already when the effective date of the ban goes into effect. And it doesn't apply to anybody that has a visa that's dated prior to the effective date, whether that's October 18th or September 24th, depending on which category you fall into. And for dual nationals, you have anybody that's a dual national, if they have a passport from a country that's not on this list, it's not banned, they will be able to travel so long as they're traveling on that non-banned country passport. And of course, there's some waivers as well that you can apply for a waiver on a case-by-case basis, so the ban won't apply to you. But for that waiver, you have to prove that applying the ban to you is going to cause the foreign national, the individual being prevented from entering this country, undue hardship, and that their entry would not pose a threat to national security or public safety, and their entry would be in a national interest. The ban itself doesn't define what it means to have an undue hardship. No one knows what it means to not pose a threat to national security or public safety, or what it would be, how it would be in national interest to allow somebody in. We're kind of left guessing at this point. Now, going forward, at CAIR, and there's some other organizations as well, we're working right now extremely hard on challenging this new ban. Inshallah, that the ban never ever sees the day of light, or if it does, it sees it in a very limited nature, similar to how Muslim Ban 2.0 went into effect. There's an exception for at least individuals that have some sort of bona fide relationship with the U.S. entity. Now, at the end of, I think, once the panel talks, we're going to take some questions, and inshallah, we'll be able to provide some more answers that are a bit more specific.
Assalamu alaikum. Can you all hear me? Is that better? All right, so I want to start off by trying to give us an idea about how this, the numbers that we're talking about here. How many people are actually going to be affected by this ban? Because when you look at the numbers, you can start to appreciate exactly how little the administration's justification for this ban, it just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. So what I did, the last year that we have visa statistics from is 2015. 2016 is still outcoming, and we have some but not everything. So the last full year that we have is 2015. So what I did is I went through and looked at all the immigrant visas and all the non-immigrant visas and carved out, based on Muslim Ban 3.0, how many people would have been affected had the ban hit on January 1st, 2015. Now, the numbers in 2016 were slightly higher, and 2017 are probably going to be, well, it's hard to say what 2017 is going to be. But it gives us at least an idea, because all these bans, the number of visas granted around the world, it's in proportion to the population, et cetera, et cetera. So I used the DHS statistics, and had the ban hit on January 1st, 2015, based on the number of people who wound up getting visas in the year 2015, 537 nationals of Chad would have been affected. Libya, the number is 1,871. North Korea, 106. Somalia, 1,078. Syria, 17,911. Venezuela, can't really tell because it's only a very small portion of, a small number of government personnel who are responsible for vetting and their families, as Ahmed mentioned. And Yemen, 8,692. So, the total number of people who would have been affected, all the nationals of all the countries coming on immigrant visas or banned visas, was 45,311 in the year 2015. The total number of Muslims affected based on a percentage of each country's population, I did the math on this, Yemen being 99%, Venezuela being 0.3%, Somalia 98.9%, Syria 82.9%, et cetera, the total number of Muslims affected would have been 41,709. Therefore, the percentage of affected people in this not-so-Muslim ban is 92.05%. Don't let anyone tell you that this is not Muslim ban. So, putting it in further context, in 2015, worldwide, there were 10,381,491 non-immigrant visas issued. That's B, H-1B, J, K, M, all these other alphabet soup of visas. And 531,463 immigrant visas issued. So the Muslim ban, 45,311, would have been only 0.4% of visas granted. And one of the interesting things that the administration said is we need it's administratively too difficult for us to vet these people from these countries. It's too hard for us to do this. We need to just put a pause on all this Muslim immigration immigration from these countries of interest. We got to put a pause on it because we don't have the resources to be able to do it. Yet the system in 2015 was capable of administering almost 11 million visas. And of those visas, a lot of people would leave and come in multiple times. There were actually 76,638,236 individual admissions that the system, the United States Department of Homeland Security, was able to administer. The number of Muslims, as the total number of admissions, was 0.058%. So none of these things, none of these numbers, say anything about the risk of criminality after admission to the United States. National security experts in the first travel ban case, the first Muslim ban case in February of this year, they swore out a declaration in federal court right here in the Eastern District of Virginia that said, and this is 10 different national security experts, John Kerry, Madeleine Albright, people that served in Democratic and Republican administrations with collective decades of experience who had intelligence current as of a week before the first travel ban. Okay? And they said in court, under penalty of perjury, that banning entire nationalities endangers troops, U.S. troops on the ground overseas, and actually increases the threat of terrorism by promoting this narrative that there is some clash of civilizations or that the West is at war with Islam. So the prior needs of the administration, namely administrative convenience, national security, inability to properly vet, are completely meaningless. The more Muslim countries are not on the list And some people will say, well, it's only 0.4% of the visas granted. How is this a Muslim ban? There's so many Muslims that are allowed to come in. No, because there's lots of different ways to ban Muslims. We've seen this with administrative processing delays, people who are stuck overseas interminably, and they have no idea when the visa is going to get granted, if at all. I recently, just 2 days ago, filed a writ of mandamus in federal court for someone who's been waiting for his visa since 2006. 2006. So the CAIR program, which is a whole other topic, the Controlled Application Review and Resolution Program, that's where the FBI comes to talk to you and says, hey, if you just work with us, we will try to do what we can to speed up. I see some nods from the audience. I'm like, wow, I guess this is a known thing happening here, right? And coercive law enforcement tactics. There's lots of ways to ban people out of the country. And the other thing that I wanted to tell you, that I wanted to talk about before my time is up, it's really important for each and every one of us to understand where these policies actually come from, okay? You have an administration that is being advised by people who do not want foreigners to be in the United States. They have a certain idea of what the United States should look like, and they don't like the way it looks right now, and they're going to do everything that they can to try to make their fantasy utopia a reality. What that means is, they know where all the buttons and the levers and the buttons to press are with the immigration system to exclude. Either kick them out or keep them out. And that's what's happening. Many of you may be aware and have heard in the news about the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals or DACA program. And most of us think of it as a Latino issue. Well, did you know that there's actually a commonality between our old Muslim registry? You remember the NSEER's program from about 10 years ago? The National Security Entry Exit Registration System, where they forced Muslim males of certain age and from certain countries. Again, 25 countries on the list, 24 were Muslim, the 25th was North Korea. This program forced Muslim males of a certain age to register. 84,000 people registered, 13,000 people were put in removal proceedings, 3,000 people were deported. Number of terror-related convictions? 0. 0. It was a big, self-licking ice cream cone, a bureaucracy that existed only to serve itself. And the NSEER's program, forcing people to register and then using their information against them, that's exactly what's happening to all these young dreamers here. They were coaxed to come out of the shadows and say, hey, we know we were brought into the United States, it wasn't your fault. But just come and give us your address and your phone number and your information, where you live, Social Security. Give us all that information, and we promise we won't use it against you. And during the administration, the previous administration, they held true to that word. Now, it's different. Textbook bad faith. They're taking that same information and using it against us brothers and sisters. As Muslims, we should know above any other community how that feels. Their struggle is your struggle, is my struggle. So keep this in mind. These policies might look a little different. Oh, it's a DACA, dreamers, it's not too much. First of all, there are a lot of dreamers in our community as well. We just don't know about them. There are a lot of Pakistani and Syrian and dreamers in our community. Not that it should matter. Because if there's an injustice on any community, it is incumbent upon each and every one of us to stand up against it as Muslims. And if you understand and see what I see as an attorney, I've been doing this for 15 years, and you look and you actually see where these policies are coming from, and you see where they're coming from, you'll understand that you have to band together with these other communities. You have to. And I'm going to stop there.
Thank you. We're just negotiating who's saying what so we don't all repeat ourselves. So I don't have to talk about what the Muslim ban does. I don't have to talk about how it's all interconnected. I'm primarily going to talk about the Rohingya genocide and mass refugee crisis. But before I do that, I'm going to add one last bit to the Muslim ban. In that there are multiple facets for how this administration is going to block Muslim immigration to the United States. One of the biggest ways that they're doing it right now is also called the backdoor Muslim ban. It's the extreme visa vetting program that the State Department recently proposed and the opportunity to comment on has now been closed. So we're waiting to see how this program is going to shape. But essentially, the State Department has proposed that it needs extreme visa vetting standards, our terminology for this, for persons coming from certain countries that pose problematic national security risks. Now, when I read that, it sounds like a bunch of gobbledygook. It really just sounds like people coming from Muslim countries, especially how this administration talks about Muslims. And so what is the extreme visa vetting standards? What are they? Number one, it asks for your travel history for the past 15 years, every country you've traveled to, how you funded those trips, and your places of residence. The second, more scary facet of this is it asks for your social media. Now, some people of an older age set might not use social media much, but as a person that's grown up with computers, if I had to tell you the name of every social media account I set up that I don't remember, let alone the ones that I do, I would probably not be able to get in the United States or probably ask to leave when they figure out the accounts that I don't even remember setting up. The other thing is social media. In a lot of countries that have restrictive authoritarian regimes, it's one of the only outlets people have to speak freely about their government and foster a free discourse. The U.S. government, we share intelligence with some of these authoritarian regimes. We could actually jeopardize the safety of future students or workers in the United States looking to relocate to the United States. I would also just say, generally, we've already now seen a shift in immigration patterns coming to the United States, where less Muslims are coming to the U.S., they're going to Canada, they're going to other countries, Mexico even, that are more receptive to these people and offer some great opportunities as well. So if we want to get some of the best immigrant talent, we really should be scaring off our potential visitors. Now I'm going to shift focus. I'm just going to give a brief update about the Rohingya crisis. My wife's from Bangladesh. I've been towards that border region before. I can only imagine what it's like for now about 1 million people stranded in this region from their home country. But for those that are not aware, in the country of Myanmar, also commonly referred to as Burma, there's an ethnic group of people. They're called Rohingya Muslims. There's about 1.1 million Rohingya Muslims inside Burma, and in the Rakhine state, which is on the northwest bordering Bangladesh, there's over 1.5 million Rohingya that have fled this region to other countries since the 1970s. Rohingya Muslims are not considered citizens by the government of Burma. They're not given citizenship rights. They are not able to vote. They cannot own land. It's almost impossible for them to travel outside of their villages unless they have passes which allow them to, which they cannot get unless they're citizens usually, and they have a lot of trouble even getting officially married. While media reports that violence broke out on August 25th, when Rohingya militants essentially fought back against Burmese military authorities, I was actually contacted about a week, 2 weeks prior to this incident by Rohingya American organizations saying there's a military buildup in the Rakhine state that they know something is going to happen. And when this violence hit, we're now seeing this as more a clearance operation where 500,000, where 500,000, 500,000 Rohingya have been pushed out, forced to flee this country, joining the 300,000 Rohingya that were already in Bangladesh who had fled from this state, this region, over the past 3 years. So that's totaling 800,000 Rohingya Muslims are right now in refugee centers in Bangladesh. They expect possibly another 100,000 could make that perilous journey over the next several months. And they're right now setting up makeshift homes and shelters in addition to these refugee centers. Humanitarian organizations that are helping Rohingya refugees in Bangladesh expect that they're going to need $434 million over the next 6 months just to fulfill their needs. The U.S. government has donated $32 million. Other countries, Turkey, Iran, other Muslim-oriented countries are actually stepping up and providing funds. The government of Bangladesh at first was hesitant to provide support, but now they've embraced this role. So their Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina has said that if Bangladesh can feed over the 150 million people they currently have, they can feed 1 million more. So alhamdulillah. Human Rights Watch, an international human rights organization, is collecting testimonials from Rohingya refugees describing Burmese soldiers beating, assaulting, raping, stabbing, and shooting villagers, even villagers who have fled towards Bangladesh. Bangladesh government has done an official inquiry to the state of Burma, asking them why they're now finding military landmines near their border on the Burmese side. So even if you're able to escape the violence of your village, you might end up dying on a landmine placed by the Burmese army. So it really is, it's a genocide by the classical legal definition for the restrictions that they placed on these people, their ability to even have children, and now they're just ethnically cleansing. Looking at just some of the things that CAIR has done in the past couple of weeks with other Muslim organizations, CAIR with other Muslim leaders are meeting with vested U.S. agencies that have the ability to influence this region, provide aid, seek political solutions, and also with other foreign governments. And I hope we can push them to do more, to contribute more, to condemn more. Hopefully at a later time I can actually discuss these meetings in more detail as they become public. CAIR sent a letter to U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations, Nikki Haley, outlining a lot of these concerns and also seeking U.S. action, U.S. aid. Since that letter and similar letters from other national Muslim organizations, aid groups, we haven't seen the U.S. government, even in this administration, take a stronger stance, but we need more concerted action, so we're going to keep on pushing. CAIR chapters alone have held rallies in California, Georgia, Kansas, Maryland, Missouri, Minnesota, Oregon, Texas, and also in front of the Burmese embassy in Washington, D.C. to raise awareness and provide calls for action to end this ethnic cleansing. And in response to the genocide, CAIR and a number of other groups, we actually we had action alerts urging people to contact their U.S. senators to seek an amendment to the National Defense Authorization Act. The House version of this military spending bill did not have this provision in it, but initially the Senate did, where we were going to now start U.S. military-to-military operations with Burma. We're happy to announce the amendment is no longer necessary, as Senate Armed Service Committee Chair John McCain said that provision will and is pulled now from the NDA, so we don't have to worry about direct military-to-military aid. And there's also a resolution in the Senate and House, and it condemns these horrific acts of violence. It calls for citizenship for Rohingya, and it asks Councillor Aung Suu Kyi to play an active role, which she so far has not done, in seeking an end to this crisis. Sadly, disappointingly, these resolutions have not moved. They're actually being blocked in the Senate by Leader Mitch McConnell and other Republican Party leadership. These resolutions need more co-sponsors if they're going to push through this party blockage, if we want to speed this up and get a vote. So I'd encourage everyone in this room to reach out to Don Beyer. I think he might be on the House resolution. If not, we have to make sure other our members of Congress are. What can we really do moving forward? Since 2012, the U.S. has provided $500 million in democratic aid to Burma. Thankfully, now we're not providing military. But we can put a lot of strings and conditions on U.S. money. This is money that the government of Burma desperately needs, and we should be more forceful in asking for citizenship rights, end to hostility, and making sure people are brought to justice. We can lobby Congress and the Trump administration to continue to do more. I'm very happy that we provided $32 million in aid. I think we can do more as a nation to help people that are fleeing essentially genocide. Likewise, we can mount greater pressure campaigns on the United Nations, which until recently turned a blind eye to this humanitarian situation and now playing catch up. We can also give to our charities. We have Muslim charities working to provide, allocate resources and funds like want relief and helping hand. And you can also give money directly to the United Nations and UNICEF projects in Bangladesh, in Burma, working on these. And finally, we just need to amp up pressure on the Burmese government. I know there's been a lot of shaming of this government, but we have to keep on pushing this campaign. We have to let the authorities in our country and in other countries, especially where there are Muslim countries that interact with Burma, that this is unacceptable behavior. We need to call our leaders to account. We need to just push for justice. A campaign for justice doesn't happen over a 3-week media cycle. It's ongoing. It needs legs. It needs feet. And we need you behind it. So, thank you. And I'll turn it over.
There was a woman who had 2 sons, one 9-year-old and one 11-year-old. And she had heard that there was, 2 days before, a massacre that had occurred in a village nearby. So her husband decided to go one day and see for himself what had happened, to investigate. But before he went, he told her to prepare, just in case that they were attacked and that they needed to leave. He goes to investigate, to visit the other village where they had other family members, and does not return. Nightfall comes, she gets nervous. He has not returned. Then daybreak. As the sun goes up, they hear the screaming and yelling of neighbors nearby. They hear shots fired in the near vicinity, and the woman becomes anxious and tells her 2 young sons to prepare to leave the home. As they exit the home, they realize that their village is also being attacked, surrounded by armed militias and soldiers attacking innocent people in the village. Her 2 sons are taken. She is forced to flee without them and without her husband. She walks 30 kilometers to a nearby safe haven where a refugee camp is being set up. And she lives her life in the refugee camp, not knowing where her sons are, or what happened to them, or where her husband is. Now, this is a story that I told you from 1948 Palestine, but it's happening exactly the same way in 2017 Arakan, Burma. And the reason why it's happening today again is because as long as injustice is allowed to operate, to continue somewhere, it will replicate itself and will happen again. And Martin Luther King Jr. said one thing one time famously. He said, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere." And he said that because he recognized that if you let oppression exist in one place, it will easily pop up in another place, because humanity's threshold for accepting something like this becomes much lower. And this is the reason why an organization like American Muslims for Palestine, an organization that is dedicated to advocating for Palestine, immediately wanted to take action. As I was saying, that is why an organization like American Muslims for Palestine, dedicated to the just and noble cause of Palestine, we felt determined and the obligation, really, to take action on this issue of the Rohingya. Because we know what it feels like to be ethnically cleansed. We know what it feels like to be displaced from our homes. We know what it feels like to have no recognition from the international community as to what has happened with our condition. We know what it feels like to be stateless. We know what it feels like to have our history removed. We know what it feels like to have our identities questioned and our heritage questioned. And so we felt this affinity towards the Rohingya people, not just as Muslims, but also as people who are experiencing something that we have been experiencing for the past 70 years. And so our organization, under the leadership of Dr. Osama Rashid, worked with a coalition of groups under the US CMO, United States Council for Muslim Organizations, and Muslim organizations, to really think about ways that we can object as a Muslim community, to register our are protesting against what was happening to the Rohingya people. And so they thought of different things, and they wanted to make sure that the Muslim community voice in America was heard, that authorities in Myanmar understood very well that Muslims around the world were not going to watch this happen and just sit by and idly expecting somebody else to take care of this problem. And alhamdulillah, under the leadership of the USCMO, they managed to secure meetings with high-level officials, even in the Burmese embassy, which was a surprising thing. We didn't expect the Burmese embassy to want to meet, considering that the Burmese government has been so closed off, has been unwilling to even acknowledge what's been going on in the region. And so they met with the leadership, they met with the ambassador of Burma here in Washington, D.C., and they made certain demands. They didn't come to build a relationship with the ambassador, they didn't come to thank the ambassador for meeting them. They came to make it clear to the ambassador that the Muslim community in America will not sit silently, that the Muslim community in America will work diligently to help and aid the oppressed, and that the Muslim community in America is sending a message to the Burmese government that if this is how we're feeling as Muslims in America, imagine what other Muslims around the world are feeling. And here we are sitting with you, talking, but other Muslims around the world might not want to sit and talk to you. So you must be very aware of that. And so I think the message was sent. I think the Burmese government heard the message clearly. And I believe that they are considering some of the demands that some of the organizations made, which is to allow Muslim relief organizations here in the United States to operate inside the region, to operate inside Myanmar, in the Arakan region, where the Rohingya are being attacked violently. And to also allow a delegation of observers, people to witness what is happening from the United States. So I'm not sure where that is now, but I think we might get an update about it soon, either from the USCMO or CAIR or any of the other organizations that are part of the coalition. So we're very proud to be a part of this, and we were actually very honored to also work with CAIR and all the other community organizations, including Darul Hijra actually, to organize a very large demonstration in front of the Burmese embassy, which happened on Friday with the Jum'ah prayer in front of the Burmese embassy, to also assert that we are here, that we are not silent, to make it very clear that the Muslim community is present. The Muslim community sees what's going on and is taking account of what is happening. And to also shame the Burmese government. They have someone who is their state chancellor, who is considered an international figure, a Nobel Peace Prize winner, Aung San Suu Kyi, and we wanted to highlight or demonstrate the hypocrisy of such an individual who doesn't even want to recognize that her own government is committing a genocide, that her own government is even committing anything wrong. She said that there was violence, but that there's no such thing as genocide. She made these comments before, she wouldn't even acknowledge these things. So the pressure on her individually also is really important, because that also plays along with the narrative that we are trying to push, which is how hypocritical can someone be when they're a Nobel Peace Prize winner, and they are not only ignoring what is happening, but actively participating in it by allowing their government to continue to do what they're doing. And so I know this town hall is primarily about the Muslim ban, but also about the efforts that our organizations are taking in the community to address issues of key importance. And one of the issues this summer that was of major importance was the situation on the ground in Palestine and Al-Aqsa. For 12 days, we saw that the Israeli government had basically issued an order to the military to set up security checkpoints and screening for every individual entering the Al-Aqsa Mosque compound. We saw that for 12 days, the Palestinian people resisted this move by refusing to enter Al-Aqsa unless they entered freely. And this was a major event. 12 days really that shook the world, in essence, because it showed again that popular movements and popular organizing on the ground can shake even the strongest powers, even a power such as the state of Israel did. We're not able to break the Palestinian people's will in pushing, they were not able to strip the Palestinian people of their dignity. People refused to enter Masjid al-Aqsa, period. if they were going to be humiliated and have to go through security screens just so that Israel can so-called maintain its security. And so they eventually were forced to take down the security measures that they had instituted. And alhamdulillah, by the will of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the people marched into Al-Aqsa, as you guys saw on TV, proudly as people who were free, not as people who were occupied or had to go through security measures. And this is something that we also help work on here with meetings, the State Department officials, to discuss this issue. We had also a USCMO delegation that I think CAIR was involved in as well, where they met with officials from the State Department to also register our protest against what the State of Israel was doing in denying Muslim rights to prayer, in denying Muslim space. This is something that is not even under their control, under international law. That is not even supposed to be an area where they are supposed to be present. This is supposed to be an area that Israeli forces are not supposed to be allowed. And yet they still control the entry points into Al-Haram al-Sharif, and we wanted to make sure that we made that very clear to the State Department that our community also registered the protests in that regard. So alhamdulillah, there's been a lot of things happening here, and our community is blessed that all the organizations are actually local, and so we need to engage with the community organizations directly as community members of Dar al-Hijra and other masajid in Northern Virginia and the DMV area. And so I hope this is an opportunity for us to also engage in other issues of importance that you think are relevant to the community. Obviously, we're focusing now on the recent administration's attack and the Muslim ban, but also watching what is happening on a foreign politics level and seeing how we can help impact and support those who are most in need.